In this video, I'm going to share with you 4 tips that I learned from the legendary Turtle Thomas, how you can implement them into your game right now. And of course, we're talking about the batting tee. See you in a second. Okay, so the first tip that I learned from Turtle is something that I see all the time, and it doesn't really matter even what level that you're playing at. It could be even the professional levels, honestly. But this is something that I see a lot of people that do make, and I never realized it until Turtle brought it to my attention. And that is actually how we're using the tee itself. And more importantly, that when guys are setting up to the batting tee, they seem to just be staring right at the tee on every swing and that ball. And actually, what he was explaining to me is that there's a much better way to use the tee. And it's going to take a little imagination, a little visualization. But the idea is that as you're setting up at the tee, the ball, of course, is sitting there ready to be hit, that you are looking forward as if you're imagining a pitcher's in front of you, and you're simulating kind of in your eye, your mind's eye, that that ball is traveling. And then you're taking your stance, your load and everything, and then you're tracking this imaginary ball to when it is at the tee, and then you're going ahead and swinging. So that tip right there has made a big difference already that we've seen with guys who have started to implement that routine, and softball players too, for that matter. Act like there's a pitcher throwing, and then just simulate that pitch coming in at you, and then hit it off the tee. Okay, tip number 2 that I learned from Turtle when it comes to using the batting tee is the idea of using and working with your hands. And that primarily is one of the big benefits to using a batting tee. Turtle has a term he uses that he calls south to north. And basically, the catcher is south and the pitcher is north. And the idea that you're using with the tee is that you're wanting to use your hands and taking your hands from south to north. You're making it in this manner instead of going diagonal across or even spinning around, going more what he calls east to west, first to third base. So we're taking more of that path from the catcher to the pitcher, and that's something that you can do very easily with the batting tee. Secondly, though, because we're using our hands so much, is that you can get yourself in different strides, different stances, but the idea is that you're using mainly just your hands to be working on hitting the ball, because ultimately that's what's delivering the bat to the pitch is your hands. Now, all the other things that go into it as part of your swing are important, but ultimately it's the hands that are delivering the bat. And so you can use a batting tee to isolate so much movement in what your body's doing and of course the pitch itself, just focusing on your hands. Now, I remember an old story that I had heard from about Albert Pujols, one of the greatest hitters of all time, that 5-10 minutes before every game, he would go down to the batting tunnels at the stadium and he would just get into a real extreme spread. So he's kind of taking his lower half out of it, and he would just work off of a batting tee with just his hands. And he would do that just long enough to get the feel right, and then he was done and he would go play in the game. So I figured if it worked for him, it should work for you too. Okay, and tip number 3, now this is definitely something that I see a lot of people make this mistake on, but honestly, I didn't know it was a mistake until, again, Turtle pointed it out to me. But if you're sitting there using a tee, more than likely you probably are setting it up right in the middle. Maybe you're setting it up maybe about mid-thigh or so, just basically that perfect pitch location. And that's what we're all working off of. But how many times does that pitch actually take place in the game? And when it does, that's probably one of the easiest balls probably for us to get, right? But this is how we practice so much. So the idea of using a tee is maybe you take a swing at that level, and then the very next pitch, move it to the outer half, and then maybe drop it down low, but standing in the same place. Now you got to deal with this one. And maybe on the next swing, move it to the inner half, and then make it a little bit higher, and then you've got to deal with this pitch. The idea is that moving this tee around on all different areas of the strike zone and using that as an opportunity to work on your swing no matter where the pitch is at, so that when we translate that into a game, because we know the pitch is not going to be right down the middle belt high every single time, we are better prepared because we've been working on pitches all over the place. So use that. Now, I will say that there is a little caveat to that. If you're more of an advanced hitter and there is something very specific in your swing that you're wanting to address, such as maybe you're struggling with the low and away pitch and you really want to just work on that, well, then you could use a batting tee to just be more low and away and just working on that pitch. But that's for a hitter that's very in tune with what they're working on and very specific on it. If you're just getting up to a tee and just taking hacks, then you might as well just be moving it around, because that's going to be a lot more beneficial to you for what you're doing and seeing in the game. And the final tip that I learned from Turtle was basically this, and it's similar to one that we just talked about in tip number 3, which is moving it around the zone. But the idea is that there's roughly 9 zones in the strike zone. You got 3 up in the top, you got middle, you got up and in, up and middle, up and away. Then you've got the middle row where you've got inside pitch, middle down the middle, middle out, and then you've got the low pitches, low and in, low down, or low in the middle, low and away. So you've got those kind of those 9 zones there. And that you can use a batting tee to put a ball in all 9 of those zones. And the benefit to that is that it actually starts as a hitter to teach you the strike zone so that you know where those pitches are. You know, if you sit there and you put a pitch that's way up here, that might be middle up, but if you're a shorter player, this may be too high. And so visually seeing this ball higher than it needs to be out of your strike zone helps you to learn that strike zone. So you can understand what is a pitch that is going to be a strike and what won't. So using this batting tee to learn the zone, moving it around so that that ball is in the zone or maybe out of the zone so that you can understand and visually conceptualize which pitch to take and which pitch to swing at, okay? I hope those tips help. Turtle's a wealth of knowledge. There are way more than that that you can use for the batting tee, but those are 4 that I learned, and I hope they help you. See you out here real soon.